Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free. And it's 100% ridiculously easy to use. We find it really convenient for Night Moves Radio and our Cloverleaf Radio network. We record when it's best for us, and best of all, we can record on the go or at home. With this easy app, it makes doing our show so much fun and very easy. Anyone wanting to start a podcast? I suggest using Anchor. Perhaps it'd be a great starting point for you.
Welcome to the Spoken Word Poetry Podcast. Listen in as poet and artist Ariana R. Cherry features words written from her heart and performed from her soul. Every week, you will hear original poetry spoken through performance art and storytelling. Listen weekly on Anchor, Spotify, Apple iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Truth, stories, and poetry. Exactly what the soul needs.
Hello, welcome to Spoken Word Poetry. Today we've got another series of my Meet the Author. And we have got my good friend Brian K. Morris, who I met at a convention so many years ago, and he knows his stuff. He actually is a full-time writer. He left his last job, which I believe was working at a water department. But he left there, and he was one of the last, the story is, he was one of the last ones hired, and then I think they let him go. So then that's when he decided to do full-time writing. But he used to be on another previous podcast I had, so I thought I would bring him on here so all of you could meet him. And his name is Brian K. Morris, who I have with me right now. Hi, Brian.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
So far, I'm pretty darn good. Thank you for having me on your program. I'm quite flattered.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Well, like I've told other previous guests, that I have been doing nothing but reading my own poems or talking about why I wrote them for almost 2 years, and I didn't want my audience to get sick and tired of just listening to me all the time. So what better way than to let them meet other authors or poets who can share their work or their advice, because actually, the beginning of my introduction for spoken word poetry, I do say something about we share truth, stories, and poetry. So I figured the stories and the truth kind of fits in with having in other guests. So I think I'm going to stick with Meet the Author series and see how well it goes.
I'm optimistic. I think it's going to go well. If we get past tonight, we're fine.
Yeah, we're fine. Well, I've gotten almost to 2 years, and I finally hit 15K, so...
Yay.
Yay!
Good for you. That's good.
Yeah. We were actually in the top 100 in Apple Podcasts in Nigeria.
Wow. That's quite an accomplishment. I have this prince that keeps writing me from there every now and then saying he's going to give me money. So,
I've had one of those too. All I need to do...
Yeah. See, we got friends in common. It's like Facebook or something.
Yeah.
Mutual friends.
All I have to do is give him my checking account number, and then I could have some money.
There you go. See, I don't know why you haven't pulled the trigger on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I just figured I'd think about it for a second.
You came to your senses. Yeah, I get it.
So, Brian, the reason that I had you on here tonight, not only are you a pretty darn cool friend, and you've been a good friend to my boyfriend Josh and I by giving us great advice, you have been in the writing field career, as I say it, for quite a few years, and you have some experience, quite a bit, and you're real good with your marketing, and I believe you're probably pretty good with public speaking. I see how you talk to people, and you're pretty good with them, and I thought you could offer some people, especially even poets or other authors, some advice on perhaps public speaking or marketing their books. And I know the first fear of any writer is kind of putting their writing out there, but then the next fear is actually speaking to an audience or even sharing your work. So what kind of ideas or advice do you have about public speaking?
Well, I used to do public broadcasting, the PBS network. My first real contact with a mass audience was I was brought in by our local PBS station to participate in the pledge drives. Mm-hmm. And, I would be out there and, we had our little roles and we'd, do all those slick things where we're asking for money and everything. And immediately, the thought of talking to several thousand people just kind of paralyzed me. So I'm going in there, into the studio, pretending I'm knowing what I'm doing, and I'm like, I got to think of something fast. And so it came to me. I had heard about certain celebrities on television who were kind of a terror to work with if you were an actor, but they were always good to the crew, mm-hmm. because the crew were the people that made you look good, or could do the very opposite. So what I did on the first night was I went to my assigned camera person, and I went up and said, "Hey, I'm Brian. How you doing?" And got their name. Excuse me. And from that point on, I stopped talking to the thousands of people that were watching the pledge drive. I was talking to the guy or the gal behind that camera, mm-hmm. and kept it one-on-one, something I was comfortable with.
Of course.
And, I think that's something that you can use in any sort of public speaking. Like, if you are, say, selling something at a personal appearance, just talk to that person like you're making a new friend. And if you are, say, addressing a crowd, one tip that I picked up from other public speakers is focus on one person at a time. Just make eye contact with one person, and just go up and down the row, left and right, and make sure you look them straight in the eyes, because one, this helps you bond with the other person, and secondly, it makes you feel like, okay, I'm just talking to them. The other people in this room are simply eavesdropping on us. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you become at it. And that's why now I do a number of live broadcasts on Facebook and on YouTube. And it was part of this experience. And also something I did was I got involved in community theater. A number of communities, have a local theater group. It's a group of amateur performers who are doing it simply for the fun. They're not going to get paid for doing whatever play falls across their desk or anything. But it's that experience of being in front of a crowd, which also helped me realize how I look in front of them, which is pretty important, especially if you broadcast, because you don't want to have your, we all have that resting face where our face just kind of like goes slack and we don't look happy. Now, there's another term.
Yes, I know there is another term. I know it is, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, the RBF. Yes. And mine happens to look like I am about to explode into murderous fury. I am having the time of my life. There are pictures of me with this horrible murderous frown on my face.
I don't think I've seen those pictures, because you're always such a happy guy. The only ones I've seen are the ones where I think I actually only took one. You didn't know that I took it. I just thought it was kind of cute. You were just off, but you looked kind of tired. You actually had your fez hat off, which is like, okay, the fez hat is one of Brian's main things. But he was at a convention, and you just looked tired. It was about the end of the day, and you were just kind of resting there, and I secretly snapped your photo. I
have a stalker. This is awesome.
But I've never seen the anger face, but I saw that one. I was like, oh, that's Brian. He just looks so tired.
The way I discovered it was actually through one of the public broadcasting fund drives. I was interviewing somebody who, without going into the full story, was rather full of themselves and didn't mind anyone knowing it, and had done something wrong with a prop, and I corrected it on the air, and I looked into the camera to try to give this Alexander Haig sort of vibe that, yes, I know what I'm doing, I'm here for all of you. And my mother called me up right afterwards and said, I have never seen anyone with that big a scowl this side of the prison bars. And I'm like, Mom, you are full of crap. And that's kind of a loving relationship Mom and I had. And so then I went back and I taped myself because, of course, I have no ego, of course. But I went back and looked at the tape, and I called her back immediately to apologize.
Oh, my gosh.
I just, like, giving this look in front of the camera. So you should be mindful of that sort of thing. And,
Yeah.
especially if you are on a vlog, a video blog with somebody, which I do these, interview shows quite frequently with people, and you've got to be aware of where you're sitting in the frame and, your best side, quote unquote, but you have to be aware of how you appear to your audience. And with practice, it becomes almost instinctive. So the thing to do is just go ahead and do it. You can't really do it incorrectly. And if you do, you learn from the experience and just simply don't do it again. Be mindful of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my early attempts at public speaking were pretty shameful. I'm just glad there wasn't anything like videotape or cameras like back then. We just had cave drawings. But
cave drawings.
But it's mostly practice and just part of the idea of embarrassment, I think, is a certain amount of ego. And once you get past that, it's amazing what you can do, and especially if you treat it like an educational experience, so that it's not really failure. It is a lesson to be learned so that you don't do it again.
Of course.
And, a lot of things become a lot more easy, and including promotion, including putting your work out there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking, in fact, just to segue into that a little, I was talking with an acquaintance of mine this week who was about to publish his first book, and he was scared poopless because he's like, this is something I've worked on for a couple of years, and he was worried about the reaction. But the idea is, when you write a poem, when you publish something, when you go out and promote your work, you're doing something that a lot of people just don't even get out of the starting block. A lot of people say, boy, I'm going to write that great American novel one day, or I've got all these poems in my head. I can't wait to put them down on paper. But they don't. Mm-hmm. But what they do have are a ton of excuses why they didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that once you create that poem, once you put it down in a tangible form, you've done something a lot of people haven't done. And then the next step is to put it out before the public. Because the thing is, the public doesn't really want to see you fail. They're really rooting for you. Mm-hmm. They may not say it, but they are. They don't want you to fall on your face. And so, they're going to be pretty receptive to whatever you have, whether it's a promotional message or whether it's just simply, seeing your book for the first time. So there's nothing really, in my opinion, to fear about this. In fact, there are, as you know yourself, there are so many benefits to presenting your work to the public that go beyond mere self-expression.
Mm-hmm. That is quite true. I'm going to go back to when you were talking about the cameraman and looking at just the people who are recording. Years and years ago, oh gosh, Sky was probably about 5. I was on the local news to promote one of my first books that I published. It was on the local WAND news in Decatur. And it was my first time on TV. And it was a very small studio where they actually did the news recording then. I haven't been there since, but again, like you said, you kind of talked to the cameraman and you kind of like sort of had like you built a little, short relationship with them. So you felt like you were just talking to them. I was interviewed by Gail. I can't remember her last name. I don't know if it was Gail Anderson. Anyway, but I kind of like just acted like it was just me and her. Cause actually the only other people in the studio was my mother who had brought me, and a couple other guests who were going to come in. I think it was just they were talking about entrepreneurs. So I was like a writer, and then they had invented some stuff. So I pretended it was just like, say there was 2 of them, my mom, me, and the camera. Okay, there are 5 of us in the whole studio. So basically, I just act like it was just the 5 of us. That there wasn't the whole local area watching on WAND News. So
Right.